Gerald Nash, compensation for women excluded from the Neary redress scheme. The Deputy has 4 minutes to make the initial statement, with 2 supplementary later.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise the issue of compensation for those women excluded from the Lord's Hospital redress scheme. The Minister of State will know that everyone in this House, herself included, has acknowledged the appalling wrongs done to these women at the hands of Michael Neary in suffering what were totally unnecessary hysterectomies and oophorectomies. The Lord's Hospital redress scheme was rolled out in 2007. It covered most of the victims, but unfortunately it left 35 women out in the cold. 35 women who did not fit into the bureaucratic grid designed for the scheme. The intransigence of former Minister Mary Harney meant that calls for the inclusion of these women were met with cold indifference for almost 4 years, and I think that compounded the injustice that those women had already suffered. Most of these women, 29, I understand, were excluded on the grounds of age, whereby women under 40 who had unnecessary bilateral oophorectomies or the removal of remaining single functioning ovary performed were barred from even applying to the scheme. In one exceptionally harsh case, a woman was excluded because the procedure was delayed by a week and took place just 3 days after her 40th birthday. These women's voices went unheard for almost 4 years until the formation of this government, when we pledged in the programme for government to seek a mechanism to compensate those women who were excluded on age grounds alone from the redress scheme. Of course, as I said earlier, there are other women who have been excluded for reasons other than age, including some who lost children and others who suffered unnecessary gynecological hysterectomies. These cases have been raised already by the Patient Focus organisation. Last February, I was heartened to hear the Minister for Health tell the House that he is aware of these cases and had given an undertaking to Patient Focus to review these cases. Indeed, he said that the review was at that stage already underway. Minister, I am concerned though that we are now almost 5 months down the road and there is still no sign of a mechanism being put in place to acknowledge the grievous wrongs done to these women. They've been waiting 5 years. What was done to these women was shameful. We must not add insult to injury by forcing them to wait any longer for the justice that I believe they are entitled to.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister Shortall.
Look, I want to thank Deputy Nash for raising this issue. I know it's an issue that he feels very strongly about and he has raised it a number of times in this House. I'm responding today on behalf of the Minister for Health, Dr James Riley. As the Deputy says, the programme for government commits to seeking a mechanism to compensate those women who were excluded on age grounds alone from the Lourdes Hospital redress scheme. I'm very conscious and mindful of the distress that has been caused to a number of women and recognise the difficulty that this issue has caused to those affected by it. The Government is committed to dealing with this matter sensitively so that, if at all possible, closure can be brought to those affected. The Lourdes Hospital redress scheme was established following the findings and recommendations contained in the report of the Lourdes Hospital Inquiry into peripartum hysterectomy, published in 2006. The inquiry was conducted by Judge Maureen Harding-Clark. The inquiry did not extend to a wider examination of Dr Neary's general practice or of the clinical practice of his colleagues. However, during the inquiry, Judge Harding-Clark became aware that there were patients who underwent bilateral oophorectomy, removal of ovaries, procedures which were not clinically necessary. These women lost the ability to reproduce and suffered immediate surgical menopause. The scheme of redress approved by government was a non-statutory ex gratia scheme. Awards were determined by an independent redress board in 2007 and 2008, which was chaired by Judge Harding-Clark. The objective of the scheme was to provide compensation to patients of Dr Michael Neary who received unnecessary obstetric hysterectomies, that is, hysterectomies carried out in association with pregnancy, and also to women under 40 years of age who received unnecessary bilateral oophorectomy. The Department of Health has been engaged in a review aimed at finding a mechanism to compensate those women who were excluded from the original redress scheme on age grounds alone. This review involves taking legal and other advice, including advice from the Office of the Attorney-General on this very sensitive situation, and I understand that the Department officials have engaged with the Attorney-General's office. I'm also aware of the recent media reports in respect of High Court litigation, where sums have been awarded to plaintiffs against the medical missionaries of Mary for incidents that occurred prior to the state taking over this hospital. In this context, I also understand that there is currently litigation before the courts in respect of 2 plaintiffs who were patients of Dr. Neary. I would like to assure the Deputy that Minister Riley is absolutely committed to finding a mechanism as soon as possible and intends bringing proposals to Government for its consideration of this matter at the earliest possible opportunity. The Deputy can rest assured that I am aware of the sensitivities associated with this issue and well understand the importance of finding a solution that will bring closure on this matter for all concerned. Thank you for raising the matter.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Nash.
Thank you very much, Chair. I very much appreciate the Minister of State's response on behalf of the Minister for Health. And we have reflected on the programme for government and ensured that a commitment was made to find a form of redress for the women who had remained outside of the original scheme, and that is to be welcomed. I think the Minister will agree that the removal of ovaries and the crude withdrawal of the ability to reproduce from any woman is particularly difficult to accept, but it's particularly difficult in these circumstances where in many of the cases, in a lot of these cases, we're talking about situations where it was not clinically necessary, as Justice Harding Clark had concluded. This is a very difficult set of circumstances for all of the women involved, many of whom reside in my own constituency, and I'm all too well aware of the impact that this whole process has had on them and their families. And I'd ask the Minister to bring a sense of urgency to this particular issue. I know you understand the sensitivities involved. I know you understand what the women concerned are going through. What we don't want to see is a situation where the Attorney-General reviews the situation almost in perpetuity, that the views expressed by the Department and by the Minister of Health simply disappear into a black hole in the Attorney-General's office. That has happened far too often, and we need to have a sense of urgency about this, a sense of closure for the women involved, and to ensure as well that justice is done for them and their families.
Minister.
And just assure the Deputy that I am very conscious of all of the sensitivities involved in this and the very serious distress that has been caused to these women. I want to give you an assurance that there is no question of this issue disappearing. Officials of the Department of Health are in discussions with the Attorney-General at the moment, and on behalf of Minister Riley, I want to reiterate his commitment to addressing this matter as soon as possible.
Thank you, Minister.